The rain fell over Geneva for the third straight day. Captain Hadia Roth sat in her kitchen, watching water trace paths down the window glass. Each drop started at the top, found a crack or a smudge, then wandered sideways before falling off the bottom edge. She had been watching them for 40 minutes. It was better than thinking. The chipped ceramic cup in her hands held water lukewarm, the way she had drunk it for 40 years. The blue glaze had worn thin at the rim. A hairline crack ran from the handle down to the base. Her late husband had given it to her on their first anniversary. He had bought it from a street vendor in Bogota, paid too much for it, and never told her how much. The cup had outlasted him by 14 years. Her uniform jacket hung on the back of the chair, frayed at the collar. The elbows were thin. The cuffs had been restitched twice. She had been retired for 11 years, but she could not throw the jacket away. It smelled like the bridge of every ship she had ever commanded. The tablet in the drawer was old. She kept it for no reason. It was never used. The screen was cracked in the top left corner. The battery lasted about 20 minutes if she was lucky. She had meant to recycle it 3 times and forgotten each time. But it was lit. The message came at 06:43 local time. Not a priority channel, not an encrypted burst, just a text notification. 3 lines, no signature, no encryption header, no urgency flag, just words on a cracked screen. Haven 7 is gone. Imperium made an example. 219 confirmed. We're activating the quiet fleet. She read it twice. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. The cup trembled in her hands, not from fear, from the cold. The kitchen heater had been broken for 2 winters. She had not bothered to fix it. Then she stood up, walked to the closet, and took down a duffel bag that had not been opened since her last deployment. The zipper was stiff. The fabric smelled like storage. Inside, the uniform still smelled like recycled ship air, that flat, dry smell of a closed environment, of 100 bodies breathing the same oxygen, of coffee and sweat and the faint tang of hydraulic fluid. She laid the uniform on the bed. She dressed slowly. The jacket fit the same way it always had, too loose in the shoulders, too tight in the wrists. She had never bothered to get it tailored. The frayed civilian jacket stayed on the back of the chair. She did not cry, she did not call anyone. She just finished dressing, picked up her cup, and walked out the door. The Drovian Imperium had ruled the Arovan corridor for 2,400 cycles. That was not a boast. It was a fact carved into the walls of every government building, stamped on every official document, repeated at the start of every school day. The Imperium had outlasted 17 rival empires, 3 galactic plagues, and 2 civil wars. It had never lost a war. It had never surrendered a system. It had never been wrong about a client species. Until now. Fleet Admiral Thrax stood on the observation deck of the Dominance, his flagship, watching the debris field that had once been Haven 7. The human colony had been sterilized from orbit, his phrase, his order, his signature on the execution order. 412 civilians had been on the ground when the bombs fell. 219 were confirmed dead. The rest had fled into the asteroid field. They had no ships. They had no food. They had maybe 3 weeks of air in the caves, assuming the caves had air at all. The Drovian survey had not bothered to check. Thrax was pleased with himself. His mandibles clicked, a sound like stones tapping together, a sound he had made since childhood whenever he felt satisfied. His gold-veined armor caught the blue light of the display. He was 7 feet 2 inches tall, 412 cycles old, and absolutely certain of his own superiority. The humans will learn now, he said to his subcommanders. 14 civilizations have learned before them, 22 client species. The Imperium does not negotiate with background noise. His staff said nothing. They had learned not to speak unless spoken to. Subcommander Vex stood at the sensor station, his own gold-veined armor reflecting the same blue glow. He was the same age as Thrax, 412 cycles, but he had spent those cycles differently. Thrax had spent them giving orders. Vex had spent them reading reports, watching displays, learning to trust his instruments when his instincts said nothing was there. He trusted his instruments now. Fleet Admiral, Vex said quietly, I am reading a gravitational signature 200 kilometers off the port bow. It is consistent with active cloaking field modulation. Thrax did not turn around. Are you afraid of ghosts now, Subcommander? I am reporting a sensor return. Maybe it is space dust. Thrax waved a 4-fingered hand. Maybe it is your nerves. The humans are primates who discovered fire 8,000 years ago. They do not have cloaking technology. They barely have ships that leave their own system. Vex opened his mouth to protest. His mandibles clicked once, a nervous habit, one he had never been able to break. I will close your career for you, Thrax said, still not turning, if you waste another moment of my time on sensor ghosts. Vex closed his mouth. He noted the anomaly in the log. He flagged it for review. He attached a note, consistent with active cloaking. Recommend passive scan at 15-minute intervals. Then he walked back to his station and said nothing more. The log entry was stamped, received, review queue not opened since cycle 1892. No one had looked at the review queue in over 500 cycles. No one even remembered it existed. 6 hours later, Peldoran's hands were on fire. Not literally, but the manual coupling he was holding open had been designed for robotic arms, not human fingers. The metal was hot enough to blister. His gloves had melted through at the palms. He had been holding it for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The power cycle needed 6 minutes minimum. "You can let go," said the voice in his helmet. "The cloak is stable." "Not yet," Pell grunted. "Give me 2 more." He was 26 years old. He had been born on a cargo ship, raised in a dozen different ports, and enlisted in the mining corps because it paid better than Earthside construction, and he did not want to spend his life welding the same walls in the same city. He had not known until his second year that the mining barges were actually Titan-class warships built inside hollowed-out asteroids. The officers called it compartmentalized information. Pell called it a lie, but he had stayed anyway. He had not known until his 5th year that there were 47 of them hiding in the Haven sector. He had not known until 6 hours ago that they had been waiting for 211 days. The asteroid field had been called unremarkable in the Drovian survey reports. The report was 3 paragraphs long. It mentioned mineral content, orbital stability, and radiation levels. It did not mention the 17 asteroids that had been hollowed out, converted into dry docks, and filled with warships built in secret. 3 decades of classified engineering, 17 hollowed asteroids, 47 Titan-class warships, 11,214 crew on the Steadfast Regard alone. And the Drovians had never looked. The humans had not been hiding their capabilities. They had been publishing them openly in defense white papers, in intercepted broadcasts, in treaty filings, in scientific journals, in children's textbooks, in the public records of every human colony for 300 years. The Drovian archive contained 94 terabytes of human communications, all of it stamped low-priority species, no further review required. A probe file from 93 years ago had logged the human homeworld with a single note: primitive civilization, probably nothing, no further investigation recommended. The probe had scanned Earth for 6 hours. It had detected radio signals, orbital debris, and a single spacecraft in low orbit. It had not detected the shipyards on the Moon. It had not detected the fleet hiding behind Mars. It had not detected anything because it was not looking. The humans had published their fleet composition. They had broadcast their weapons manifests. They had registered their treaties in the Central Registry. They had even filed a formal complaint when the Drovians first entered human space without permission. The complaint had been stamped low priority and filed in a folder that no one had opened in 93 years. They published this freely, Vex would later write in his report. "We just did not think it mattered." Pell let go of the coupling at 5 minutes and 52 seconds. His hands were blistered. The bandages would come later. Right now, he just leaned his helmet against the bulkhead and breathed. The cloak held. On the main display of the Steadfast Regard, 47 green icons blinked in perfect formation. They had been sitting in Drovian space for 211 days. They had watched the patrol routes. They had mapped the sensor coverage. They had recorded the shift changes, the communication protocols, the moment when the night watch started to yawn and the day watch had not yet finished their coffee. They had been waiting for the order. Captain Hadia Roth walked onto the bridge at 13:21 ship time. She was not wearing her uniform jacket. The frayed civilian one was still over her chair in her quarters. She had not bothered to put it away. She carried her chipped ceramic cup of lukewarm water. She looked, Pell thought, like someone's grandmother who had wandered into the wrong room by accident. Her hair was gray, her face was lined, her hands were steady. "Status," she said. 47 ships, all cloaks stable," said the sensor officer. Her name was Ensign Mara Chen, 23 years old, 3rd-generation fleet. Her voice did not shake. "Drovian fleet is 23 vessels, including the Dominants. They have not detected us." "Have they filed the report on Haven 7? A pause. Chen's hands moved across her display. She pulled up the Drovian communication logs, translated in real time by a system that had been running for 93 years and had never been used for anything important. "Yes, Captain, 219 dead. They are calling it a sterilization of non-compliant assets." Captain Roth took a sip of water. The cup made a small sound against her teeth. She looked at the display for a long moment. He held, he counted, he waited. The display showed the debris field. It showed the Drovian fleet arranged in a standard patrol formation. It showed the asteroid caves where the survivors were hiding, the ones who had not been vaporized, the ones who had run fast enough and far enough. It showed 219 dead, and the Drovians had not even bothered to count the names. Then she said very quietly, "Open a channel." The channel opened at 1323. Captain Roth's voice filled the bridge of the Dominance, calm, measured, the way a tired grandmother tells a child that dinner is ready. She did not shout, she did not threaten, she just stated facts. Fleet Admiral Thrax of the Drovian Imperium. This is Captain Hadia Roth of the human vessel Steadfast Regard. You have killed 219 of my people at Haven 7. You have 14 children and 3 pregnant women in that count. I am giving you 10 minutes to cease fire, withdraw from the system, and release any survivors you are holding. There will not be a second warning. Fleet Admiral Thrax laughed. His mandibles clicked so hard they almost cracked. His gold-veined armor shook with the force of his amusement. He turned to his subcommanders, looking for them to share the joke. "Human," he said, still laughing. "You have 1 ship, I have 23. You are a bedtime story. You are a ghost my subcommander sees in his sensor ghosts. I will give you 10 seconds to surrender, and then I will add your ship to the debris field." Captain Roth did not respond. 9 minutes and 47 seconds passed. The Drovian fleet held position. Thrax did not give the order to fire. He did not believe there was anything to fire at. He had dismissed the sensor anomaly. He had dismissed the warning. He was already thinking about dinner, about the ceremony he would hold when he returned to the home world, about the promotion he would give himself for sterilizing a human colony. He was wrong. The sensor officer on the Steadfast Regard watched her display. Her name was Ensign Chen, 23 years old, and her hands were steady. "Captain, they are not moving." "I know," Roth said. "They are not even scanning." "I know. They think we are ghost." Roth took another sip of water. The cup was almost empty now. The water was still lukewarm. She had been drinking it lukewarm for 40 years, and she was not going to change now. "Then let's show them what ghosts look like." At 1333, the sky turned black. Not metaphorically, literally. 47 human ships decloaked simultaneously across a volume of space that encompassed the entire Drovian fleet. They emerged from behind asteroids, from beneath gas giant rings, from empty space where no ship should have been. The Steadfast Regard appeared 200 kilometers off the port bow of the Dominance, the exact position Subcommander Vex had flagged 6 hours ago. The sensor officer on the Dominance screamed, not a word, just a sound. A sound Vex had not heard in 412 cycles, the sound of a professional seeing something impossible. 17 decloaks in Sector 4, Vex said, his voice steady despite his mandibles clicking faster than they had in 412 cycles. 12 in Sector 7, 11 in Sector 12. 7 in Sector. Enough! Thrax slammed his fist on the armrest, the metal dented. His hand would bruise, he did not care. Where did they come from? "They were here," Vex said quietly. He did not look up from his display. He did not need to, the numbers were enough. "They have been here for 211 days. I filed the report. You called it a ghost." The display showed 47 human ships in perfect formation. Their weapons were not aimed. Their rail cannons were not charged. They had simply arrived, and that was the terrifying part. The Steadfast Regard transmitted a data packet to the Dominance. It was a survey drone scan of the Drovian flagship's hull. It had taken 11 seconds to complete. It identified a 600-year-old engineering flaw in the main reactor housing, a microfracture that had been present since the ship was built. The flaw was smaller than a human fingernail. It had been missed by every inspection, every scan, every safety check for 600 years. The human drone had found it in less time than it took to drink a cup of tea. The message attached to the scan read, "This is a courtesy. We are not asking for surrender. We are asking for correction. You have 6 hours to evacuate your civilian transports from this system." Fleet Admiral Thrax stared at the display. His flagship's fatal flaw transmitted as a gift. 47 ships that should not exist. A human captain who had not raised her voice once. "She gave us a warning," Vex said. 6 hours. "She could have killed us in 11 seconds. She chose not to." Thrax did not answer. His mandibles had stopped clicking. The survivors of Haven 7, 193 of them, were rescued in the first hour. Human shuttles slipped through the debris field, past the bodies that had frozen in the void, into the asteroid caves where the living had hidden. The shuttles were small, fast, and painted black. They did not show up on Drovian sensors. They had been designed for exactly this moment. Children with no parents, parents who had lost children. A teacher who had covered her students with her own body and survived because the blast had been just far enough away. They were brought aboard the Steadfast Regard. A cargo bay became a refugee center, blankets from storage lockers. Water from the emergency supplies. A doctor who had not slept in 30 hours, moving from cot to cot, checking pulses, cleaning wounds, saying the same thing over and over. You're safe now, you're safe. Peldoran stood in the corridor outside the bay, his hands wrapped in fresh bandages. The burns would heal, the memory would not. Through the open door he saw a woman holding a child. The child was not hers. Her own child was on the wall that did not exist yet, the wall that would be built from obsidian, the wall that would carry the names of the dead. He looked away. Captain Roth walked past him. She did not stop. She did not speak. She just kept walking toward the conference room where Subcommander Vex was already waiting. Her cup was still in her hands. The water was still lukewarm. The Drovian fleet had withdrawn to the edge of the system. The civilian transports were gone. The survivors were safe as anyone could be after watching their home burn from orbit. The Steadfast Regard held position, its 46 sister ships arranged in a formation that had no name because no human had ever needed to use it before. Captain Roth sat across from Subcommander Vex in a small conference room. The table was metal, the chairs were uncomfortable. The lights hummed at a frequency that gave Pell a headache, but Pell was not in the room. It was just Roth and Vex, two old soldiers, a chipped cup of water, and the silence. You could have killed us all, Vex said. Why did you not? Roth took a sip. She looked at him for a long moment, the way a tired grandmother looks at a child who has finally asked the right question. Where we come from, she said, there is a thing called proportional response. She set the cup down. The ceramic made a small sound against the metal table. You killed 219 of my people. You did it because you thought we were nothing. We are not nothing. We never were, but we are also not what you think we are. She paused, the lights hummed. Vex's mandibles were still. We do not conquer, we do not enslave, we will not destroy you, we will not shame you, but we will make you remember. Vex did not speak. We remember, Roth said, 219 names. Every one of them paid for in full, not with your civilian lives, not with your homeworld, but with your attention. You will remember this day. You will tell your children. You will carve a line above your Naval Academy's main entrance. She stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. That is the correction, not your destruction, not your surrender, just your attention. The Drovian fleet left the system 4 hours later. They did not fire a single shot on the way out. They did not send a message. They just left. Vex's hand moved to his personal log. He began writing a report he would submit before the Dominance reached its home port. A report that would open every contested zone where human presence had not been confirmed. The report was 847 words long. He wrote it in 11 minutes. He did not need to check his sources. He had been watching the displays for 412 cycles. He knew exactly what he had seen. The rain had stopped by the time Roth returned to her quarters. She sat on the edge of her bunk. The chipped cup was empty now. She had finished the water during the meeting with Vex, and she had not refilled it. The cup sat on the small table beside the bunk, next to a photograph of a man she had not seen in 14 years. The duffel bag was still on the floor. She had not unpacked it. She was not sure if she would. On the tablet, the old one, the one from the drawer, the one that should have been off, a new message waited. 193 rescued, 47 ships nominal, no casualties, awaiting further orders. She did not reply. She just held the cup and listened to the silence of the ship around her, the hum of the reactor, the distant click of boots on metal decking, the quiet breathing of 11,214 people who had just done something no one had ever done before. They had won. They had not fired a single shot. They had rescued the dying and fed the hungry and shown an empire that it had been wrong for 93 years. And none of it felt like winning. Somewhere in the Drovian archives, a report from 93 years ago sat in a folder stamped low priority species, no further review required. No one had updated the stamp yet. But they would. The Drovian fleet reached its home port 17 hours after leaving the Haven system. They had traveled in silence. No one spoke on the bridge. No one asked questions. The sensor officers kept their eyes on their displays, and the navigation team plotted the course without being told, and Fleet Admiral Thrax sat in his command chair without moving for the entire journey. His mandibles did not click once. The Dominance docked at 0423 ship time. The docking clamps engaged, the atmospheric seals pressurized, the boarding tube extended from the station to the airlock. Thrax did not stand up. Subcommander Vex stood at the edge of the command deck, waiting. He had been waiting for 17 hours. He could wait a few more minutes. Subcommander Thrax said finally. His voice was quiet. Vex had never heard it quiet before. Fleet Admiral, file the report. Already filed, sir. Thrax turned his head. His gold-veined armor caught the light, his eyes, small, dark, older than any human eyes Vex had ever seen, fixed on Vex with an expression that was not anger. It was confusion. "What did we miss?" Thrax asked. Vex considered the question. He had been considering it for 17 hours. He had an answer. "Everything," he said. The Galactic Senate convened 3 days later. The chamber was a sphere 2 kilometers in diameter. Delegations from 847 species sat in concentric rings, each ring representing a different tier of political power. The inner ring held the old empires, the ones that had ruled for 10,000 cycles or more. The middle ring held the regional powers. The outer ring held the client species, the recent arrivals, the ones who had not yet proven themselves. The Drovian Imperium sat in the inner ring. They had always sat in the inner ring. A human had never sat in any ring. The emergency session had been called by Subcommander Vex, now acting Fleet Admiral Vex, following Thrax's immediate request for medical leave. The agenda was brief: classification review of contested Zone A7, Haven Sector. The delegate from the Varath Collective spoke first. "The Drovians are requesting a reclassification of human space, the same humans they described as primitives 93 years ago." Vex stood at the podium. His mandibles were still. His hands were behind his back. "We were wrong," he said. The chamber went silent. 847 species, 2,112 delegates, not one of them spoke. "We classified the humans as low priority based on a 6-hour probe scan conducted 93 years ago. We did not update that classification. We did not read their communications. We did not review their fleet manifests. We did not notice that they had built 47 warships inside hollowed asteroids directly beneath our patrol routes." He paused. "Those warships have been sitting in our space for 211 days. We did not detect them until they chose to decloak." The delegate from the Crithian hegemony raised a manipulator. "You are saying the humans have cloaking technology." "They have cloaking technology," Vex said. "They have had it for at least 3 decades. They published the research openly. We did not read it. Then why did they decloak? Why show themselves now?" Vex closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he said, "Because we killed 219 of their civilians. They considered that an overreaction. They wanted us to stop." The chamber did not go silent this time. It erupted. 6 weeks later, the Galactic Senate created a new classification category. Type H, undetermined capability, recommend no hostile action without third-party verification. The vote was unanimous. 847 species, every single one of them, voting to admit that they did not know what humans were capable of and that they were not willing to find out the hard way. The Drovian Imperium withdrew all claims to human space. The treaty was signed in a conference room on a neutral station by a human diplomat who had not been born when the first probe filed its report. She signed with a pen, not a stamp. She did not laugh. She did not smile. She just signed, handed the pen to the Drovian delegate, and walked out. The delegate stood there for a long time, holding the pen, not understanding what had just happened. Later, she would tell her staff. They did not even gloat. The memorial wall was built on the site of Haven 7. It took 3 weeks. Human construction crews landed on the blasted ground, cleared the debris, and poured the foundation. The wall was polished obsidian, smooth as water, black as the space between stars. It faced east, toward the rising sun. 412 names were carved into it, organized by family, alphabetized by first name. 219 of them were marked with a small star, the ones who had died. The rest were unmarked, the survivors, the ones who had been rescued from the asteroid caves, the ones who would carry the memory of this place for the rest of their lives. The dedication ceremony was small. No politicians, no speeches from the Galactic Senate, just the survivors, the rescue crews, and the captain who had given the order. Captain Hadia Roth stood in front of the wall. She was not wearing her uniform. The frayed civilian jacket was back, the one from the kitchen chair, the one she had worn for 11 years of retirement. The chipped ceramic cup was in her hands. The water was lukewarm. Peldoran stood behind her, his hands still wrapped in bandages. The burns were healing. The scars would last forever. He did not mind. He had done something that mattered. That was enough. Roth touched the stone. Her fingers found a name. Amina Yusef, 34, teacher. 3 lines down, Yusef Layla, 8. 3 lines down from that, Yusef Samir, 6. No birds in the sky, no children on the ground, no sounds of life where life had been. She read every name on the wall. She read them slowly, moving from left to right, row by row. The sun moved across the sky. The shadows shifted. The survivors stood in silence, watching her. It took her 2 hours to read all 412 names. When she finished, she did not give a speech. She did not salute. She did not cry. She just stood there looking at the wall, holding her cup. They laughed at us, Pell said quietly, called our ships bedtime stories, called our myths ghosts. Roth did not turn around. We were not hiding, she said. We were building, we were waiting, we were hoping they would never make us show them. She took a sip of water from her chipped cup. The rain had finally stopped. The sun was setting over the new memorial wall. The polished obsidian caught the light, and the 219 stars carved into its surface seemed to glow. We are not very impressive, Roth said to no one in particular. We know that. We came a long way to be unimpressive in front of you, and we think it was worth it. She turned and walked back to her shuttle. The survivors watched her go. The rescue crews watched her go. Pell Doran watched her go, and he remembered that moment for the rest of his life. The old woman in the frayed jacket, walking away from a wall of names, carrying a chipped cup of lukewarm water. The shuttle lifted off. Behind it, on the polished obsidian wall, 219 stars caught the last light of the sun. The Drovian Naval Academy carved a single line above the main entrance. It took them 3 days to decide on the wording. The committee debated. The admirals argued. The chaplain prayed. In the end, they chose the simplest version, the one that said everything and nothing. Silence is not the same thing as nothing. The words were carved into the stone by a robotic arm, the same arm that had carved the names of every graduating class for 400 cycles. The arm did not know what the words meant. It just followed the program. The first cadets to walk under the new inscription stopped and stared. They had heard the rumors. They had read the reports. They had seen the sensor logs, the ones that showed 47 ships appearing from empty space, the ones that showed the Dominance's reactor flaw, the ones that showed a human captain drinking lukewarm water while an empire recalibrated around her. What does it mean? One cadet asked. Her instructor looked at the words for a long time. It means, he said finally, that we should have read the reports. 800 old treaty relays lit up across the galaxy. They were buried in the archives of a dozen species, agreements with humanity that had been signed, stamped, filed, and forgotten. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, research partnerships, extradition treaties, cultural exchange programs. All of them had been signed by humans. All of them had been ratified by human governments. All of them had been stamped low priority by the Drovian Imperium and everyone else. Now the relays were lighting up. Species were checking their records. Ambassadors were pulling old files. Archivists were working overtime to find out what they had agreed to, what they had promised, what they had dismissed. One by one, they found the same thing: nothing hostile, nothing threatening, nothing that justified a sterilization from orbit. Just words on paper, just signatures, just a species that had been trying to talk for 93 years and no one had been listening. Subcommander Vex, now Fleet Admiral Vex, confirmed by the Drovian High Command in a vote that was not unanimous but was close enough, sat in his new office. The office had belonged to Thrax. Vex had kept the furniture but removed the decorations, the ceremonial weapons, the battle flags, the taxidermied heads of extinct species, all of it gone. In their place, he had installed a single display. It showed the sensor log from the Haven system, the moment when 47 human ships decloaked simultaneously. He watched it every morning. Not because he enjoyed it, not because he was afraid, because he needed to remember. His first official act as Fleet Admiral was to file a classified report recommending immediate review of all contested zones, where human presence has not been confirmed and where cloaking technology cannot be ruled out. The report was flagged Priority 1. It was opened within the hour. No one called it a ghost. The Galactic Senate's new classification category, Type H, had an unexpected consequence. Within 3 months, 43 species had reopened treaty negotiations with humanity. Within 6 months, 17 border disputes had been resolved in humanity's favor without a single shot fired. Within a year, human ships were docking at stations that had never allowed them before, and human diplomats were sitting in conference rooms where no human had ever sat. The humans did not gloat, they did not demand apologies, they did not ask for reparations. They just showed up, they signed the papers, they drank lukewarm water from chipped cups. And every time the other species remembered the sensor logs, every time they remembered the 47 ships, every time they remembered that they had been wrong for 93 years and that the humans had known it the whole time. The tablet in the drawer, the old one, the one with the cracked screen, sat in Captain Hadia Roth's kitchen for 3 more weeks. She had not turned it off, she had not turned it on. It was just there on the counter next to the sink, where she could see it while she made breakfast. The battery died on the 22nd day. The screen went black. The message: 193 rescued, 47 ships nominal, no casualties, awaiting further orders, disappeared into the dark silicon. Roth did not charge it. She did not need to. She already knew the answer. Peldoran went back to the mining core. The cover was still active, the lie was still in place. The officers still called it compartmentalized information, and the new recruits still believed they were digging rocks out of asteroids. But now Pell knew the truth. He knew about the 47 ships. He knew about the 211 days. He knew about the human captain who had stared down an empire without raising her voice. And when the new recruits asked him why his hands were scarred, he told them the truth. "I held a coupling open for 6 minutes," he said. "The ship needed it, so I did it." They did not understand. They would someday. They would be on a bridge somewhere, watching a display, waiting for an order, and they would remember what Pell had said, and they would hold on a little longer. That was enough. The stamp in the Drovian archive, the one that said low priority species, no further review required, was finally updated. It took 93 years, 3 months, and 11 days. The new stamp reads: Type H, undetermined capability. Review required before hostile action. The archivist who made the change was a young Drovian named Vel, 87 cycles old, fresh out of the academy. She had been assigned to the archive as a punishment for questioning a superior officer. She did not mind. She liked the quiet. She found the file by accident while looking for something else. She read the probe report. She read the human communications. She read the fleet manifests, the treaty filings, the defense white papers. Then she read the sensor log from the Haven system, the moment when 47 ships decloaked from empty space. She stared at the display for a long time. Then she changed the stamp. She did not tell anyone, no one asked. The archive was the archive, old, forgotten, full of dust and dead files. No one would notice a changed stamp. But Vel noticed, and she remembered. Captain Hadia Roth sat in her kitchen, watching the sun rise over Geneva. The rain had not returned. The sky was clear. The light slanted through the window and caught the dust motes floating in the still air. The chipped ceramic cup was in her hands. The water was lukewarm. The blue glaze was worn thin at the rim. The frayed civilian jacket hung on the back of the chair. She had not worn the uniform since the memorial. She was not sure if she would ever wear it again. The tablet was dead on the counter. She had not charged it. She did not plan to. But she kept it there. She kept it there to remember. Not the victory, not the ships, not the empire that had been wrong for 93 years. The names, the 219 names, the stars on the obsidian wall. The children who would never grow up, the parents who would never see their children again, the teacher who had covered her students with her own body and survived because the blast had been just far enough away. She remembered them. That was all she could do. That was all she had ever wanted to do. The sun rose higher, the kitchen warmed. Roth took a sip of water, set the cup down on the table, and watched the light move across the wall. No one had updated the stamp yet, but they would.